What up, guys? Welcome to the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Today we have our guest, John Hansen. So John is a ADCC championships competitor. He's competed and won big competitions like Nogi Worlds and other things. Really tough dude. Very good competitor. Has a very distinct game for being a big guy. Like when he's a big guy, if you see him, he has this very like unique presence, right? Like just a very big fella, very prominent brow, right? Like just walking around, right? He stands out. But then when you see him compete, again, stands out as well because he does not play a very conventional big guy game, right? You know, granted, there are big guys that play off their back. Nonetheless, he has a very high level of flexibility, plays a lot of different positions. But we was talking with him after CGI2, and we were just kind of talking about our thoughts about CGI2, CGI1, ADCC, and the whole thing. And I was like, well, we're sitting here going back and forth on Instagram. Like, you should be on the podcast. Like, let's get you on the podcast. It seemed like it'd be an interesting conversation, and it definitely was. I had a lot of fun talking with him. Definitely an interesting guy. We jumped right into it and we're all over the place, and lots of interesting ideas, both from a like personal mindset level, and his approach may not be the best approach for you, but obviously, like, you know, we were all trying to find stuff. And so again, has his own approach to things, but even the way he goes about training and some of his ideas on training and everything else, there's some interesting ideas that could possibly help you out for your jiu-jitsu as well. So thank you guys for being here. Big thanks to our sponsors for helping make this thing happen. Thanks Athletic for sponsoring the podcast. You guys can check him out at ATHLETHC. So it's Athletic with the THE spin. And what Athletic is, where's our little Athletic? If you got the video here, it comes in these nice little boxes here. Basically, if Athletic makes, I guess if you wanted to give it kind of a thing, it's like a microdose THC, CBD, other cannabinoid mints. So for instance, they've got 3 different versions. They have power, flow, rebound, THC, CBD, and CBC, flow, THC, CBD, CBG. And so there's these different compounds that they have to help facilitate different functions, like getting into a flow state or recovering, or, you know, getting into some heavier training, that kind of stuff. And so the mints are microdose. They're not super crazy. You're not going to have that crazy experience that you had that one time where you ate too many edibles, or you ate that gummy that your friends told you to eat and you then were off your rocker for, you know, a few hours. Nothing like that. It's very mild, but it's noticeable. So again, I like them. I've used them off and on. I don't use them every day. But I do like them every now and then. It's like whether I'm writing and I want to get into a certain state for that, or if I'm working out, like especially like when I'm experimenting with like new positions, I like the flow one. I'll take it, and I feel like it helps me kind of like turn off my brain a little bit so that I can experiment with the positions and just play around a little bit. But if you guys want to check them out, you can go to their website at athletic, ATHLETHC.com, and you can use the promo code Chewjitsu10 for 10% off the order if you want to try them out for yourself. Big thanks to our sponsor, Epic Roll. Epic Roll is a longtime sponsor of the podcast. They make all my Nogi gear. If you ever, I just posted my wins at the ADCC Open this weekend. And again, it's the Chewjitsu rash guards made by Epic Roll. I'm getting some more of those ordered, so hopefully we'll have some of those in stock for you to get if you'd like to. But again, if you guys want to go to their website and check out what they have to offer, they have everything from gis, rash guards, shorts, anything and everything jiu-jitsu related that you could possibly want. Great designs, good quality stuff, great customer service. And again, everything's available 20% off at checkout with the promo code Jiu-Jitsu20 for 20% off the order at epicrollbjj.com. Also, thanks to our longtime sponsor, Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web is one of the OGs in the CBD space. They also make a lot of other products now, everything from CBN, which can be a godsend if you're maybe struggling to have a little bit of sleep. One of my buddies was just talking about this yesterday. He was like, you know, because he works in a corporate job and he's having to think a lot and do this different stuff with creative work. And he's like, man, if I just can't get my brain to turn off, I always do a little mixture. And he's like, CBN, is in that mixture. But again, a lot of interesting stuff that they have. They also have some functional mushroom products. If you want to check out what they have, you can go to their website, charlottesweb.com, and the promo code is Chewjitsu30 for 30% off the order. So whether that's the CBD, that's the balms and the rubs that they have for sore muscles, or the CBN products, or the functional mushroom products like reishi, lion's mane, you can get that at charlottesweb.com and use the promo code Chewjitsu30 for 30% off the order. If you guys want to support the podcast directly, you can do so by rolling over to our Patreon website at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. When you go there, you will see a list of perks that are included for joining up. And again, for a very inexpensive price, you can get access to a ton of different content. And more importantly, you're supporting the podcast that you listen to. So again, if you listen to the podcast regularly, you enjoy it, then that is one way that you can support it. By going to the Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Also, guys, if you want to get my daily email and receive a ebook that I give away for free along with the video that comes with it, you can do so by going to my website at jiujitsu.net/join, JOIN. When you join up, I'll give you the free ebook and video along with some other resources. Then you'll get my daily email, which if you like the things that I talk about, you like my videos, you like the podcast, you'll like the email. And again, you'll get that daily sent to you and you can unsubscribe at any time. So guys, with that said, let's jump into this podcast with John. So man, like, we were just talking about it before we got on then. And, so tell me about this guy. Like you said, it was the first guy you started, I guess it was the first gym you started teaching at and everything started to move in a positive direction afterwards.
Oh, no. It was actually quite the opposite. So like I had been with a buddy of mine and his name's Scott Moore, who's the guy who gave me my black belt with Rodrigo Vaghi. He and I had bounced around from the gym to gym. I think the joke was 7 gyms in 6 years. We just we're not very likable people. And we eventually ended up coming to what is now Dojo Omaha, but at the time was the Clark Academy of Martial Arts, which is owned by Dan Clark. Okay. And we came there looking for just a place to land. The place we were at previously kind of put us out without a warning. And so we were trying to keep our program together. And Dan was incredibly gracious and excited to have us and wanted to make sure whatever we needed was taken care of. And so we started working. I started teaching classes there in like Q3 of 2014. And then at the end of Q4 of 2014, he has an executive protection and private security agency that I am like now the general manager of. But at the time I was just, doing gig work like any other jiu-jitsu guy does, and teaching privates and all of the things that make a stable life very difficult. And he asked me if I wanted a part-time job that would, be some stable income and whatnot. And I said, yeah. And then like one opportunity led to another, and I took all of them. And basically every good decision in my life, and a lot of bad ones, but all the good things that happened in my life, either whether it's like came right in that Q3 of 2014, I got into the relationship that ended up being my wife. And that was awesome. I started working for Dan at the dojo and then ended up working for Clark International. And I'm still here, and I'll be here till I die. So I like no intention of retiring or anything else. I just absolutely love everything about what I'm doing. So all those good things happened at the same time. It's really cool.
What do you do? What's the executive protection agency? What is that?
So Clark International is an executive protection agency founded out of Omaha, Nebraska, and we protect clients. Our footprint is across all the continental U.S. and we operate internationally regularly. So I am the general manager of our uniform services division, and support a team of, well, quite frankly, a lot of people. I don't know that I can say how many, but a lot of people in the uniform services. And then we also have a plainclothes division. We have 5 divisions within the company, and we are, anywhere and everywhere. So it's a lot of fun.
Oh, it's interesting.
Very cool, dude. As far as you're talking about your wife, how did you meet your wife?
Oh, dude. So like, actually I got introduced to my wife by her sister, who did not like me at the time, but was trying to be polite. And we were at the gym, and she was just the most beautiful one I've ever met. She was 8 years younger than me. Well, she's still 8 years younger than me. But during that time, when I met her, I was seeing somebody else, and just wanted to hang out with her because Christina seemed so cool that I didn't really care whether or not like there was anything romantic. I just wanted to be a part of whatever she was a part of. And that was cool. And so then she said no, had no interest in it, because I was seeing somebody. And then so it actually got to the point where the gal I was seeing reached out to her and said, "Hey, John's actually a nice guy. He's not well, I am a turd, but he's not a turd in this way. So please, if you want to like have coffee with him or something, go right ahead." Like, and Christina was not interested in that at all. Totally cool. And then that gal broke up with me, and I reached out to Christina like 6 hours later and said, "Hey, would you like to get that coffee?" And she said, "No, you already told you you're in a relationship." I said, "Well, she broke up with me 6 hours ago, and I'm pretty distraught. Would you like to get that coffee?" She said, "Absolutely." We've been together ever since. So,
oh, cool. Okay.
It's funny when Chewy was asking, I just saw your face just kind of light up.
Well, everybody's
it's interesting to see that.
Like, you could take someone, and I'm sure you're an old enough guy, so you probably have some good stories, but you can take someone that is not good at telling stories at all, and they always have a good story when they like met their wife or husband that they really enjoy being with. There's always a good story there. So,
well, and the best part about it is that the gal that left me ended up leaving me for the man that she's like married and is still with. So it's like,
perfect.
End up working out. There's nothing to be upset about. Like, it's rare that you find a situation where everybody wins. So
you mentioned that at the start of the podcast, so you and I guess your friend were not likable people.
Oh yeah, Scott and I were.
I wanted to know that too.
What is and then you also said you're a turd in certain ways, and you're.
Well, I mean, like when I met my wife in 2014, I was just like a lot of jiu-jitsu guys that was hustling and trying to find a way to earn a buck wherever I could, and wasn't the most genuine of people, and definitely wasn't about anybody but myself. And that's just part of being 28 years old and still an adolescent, even though you should have grown out of adolescence a lot earlier than that. I think jiu-jitsu actually, it's one of my frustration points with the sport, is that I think it protracts the onset of adulthood for anybody that competes. And that like this country there is a high enough quality of life, and it is easy enough to get by, that if you don't want to grow up, you can be in never land until you're too old to compete at a high level. And then I think reality hits people sometime earlier than others. And so I had not had reality hit me at that time, and probably could have kept going with that. But I had that first date with my wife, and the only thing that I could think afterwards was, wow, I remember driving home. It was supposed to be a coffee date. Turned out to be 12 hours. We just sat in the park and talked, and was just totally enamored with her. And I remember leaving thinking, holy smokes, God, I know why you put this woman here. Not for me to obviously be able to get a second date with her, but to show me that, man, like, I have totally wasted the last 10 years of my life just doing jiu-jitsu, when there's so much more I could be doing. I can never compete for a woman like this. I got to figure it out. And I remember going to bed at 5 a.m. after spending all night talking to this woman, thinking like, there is no way in the world I would be able to compete for her attention. And that's okay. But like, cause I feel like I've woken up, and then the next morning I didn't know what the protocol was to, when you text them after a date or whatever. So I just texted her and let her know, hey, I know I don't know what the protocol is or whatever, but I had a great time. And if you want to hang out again, that'd be good. And she hit me right back. It was like, yeah, I definitely do. So I still wasn't convinced. I figured, she'll figure this out, but and at some point find somebody that was like more at her station. But in the interim, she hadn't ever had a boyfriend before. So I was like, I will not be the guy to be a jerk or break her heart. And so then eventually I just, I don't know. I just don't think she's figured it out yet. So it worked out, but I was going to say, in terms of like my friend and I, we were both very I shouldn't say abrasive, but Scott and I were just difficult people to like. We were very opinionated. Both kind of lived in our own world. Both did jiu-jitsu. Both had hard times communicating with people. Probably not lacking in what people would call emotional intelligence. And so for a very long time, we just did not suffer from an overabundance of friends. And so probably our difficulties in communicating more than anything led to us leaving one gym and then another gym and then another gym and then another gym. And it was always either his fault or my fault. And it was definitely my fault more often than his. And he stood by me quite a bit. And then we ended up asking Dan if we could have a space here. And we did. And Scott ended up opening his own facility. And so we had 2 gyms after that. And unfortunately, Scott passed away last year. So that kind of sucked.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, he was really young when he died. But
how did he pass?
Heart attack.
Oh, wow.
Like definitely really like pizza rolls and didn't have the best diet, but I've never met a better mind in the sport of jiu-jitsu. And I know there are great guys in jiu-jitsu out there, but he elevated the level of Omaha jiu-jitsu to an unreal position for what his reach was. So
You were talking about your wife. I had a similar experience with mine where,
let's hear it.
you know, it's what's like a similar experience in the sense of like it had a grounding effect, you know, because, you know, when you're thinking about competing or, you know, for me at the time I was like competing, building a gym, whatever, I'm trying to do that stuff. And it's a very self-centered sort of endeavor to some degree. I mean, the growing a gym, not necessarily there's you're building your students too, but nonetheless, it's like you're just focusing on these goals, whatever. And then, you know, you meet a woman that sort of pulls you back down to earth a little bit. And then, you know, because I think about it that way, right? Like, because as a competitor, someone that's trying to build something, you're striving, you're trying to reach higher and higher. And I feel like a lot of times the women that we meet, they kind of get us to grow roots a little bit, settle down a little bit, like, you know, come back down. And so my wife, it was the same thing where when we started to get together and I realized that this is going to go somewhere, I'm like, well, how do I like take care of this woman as she gets older and provide for her and, you know, all this stuff. I'm like, I gotta figure it out, you know? And so it really, like, when I look at the trajectory of my life by most measurable standards of success and all that stuff, it's like when we met, it was like, there was like a little line graph there. So I know that feeling as well, having a sense of, what's the word? Dread, paranoia, whatever, anxiety about like, I've got to get my act together now.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, so my wife is a black belt and she's a very good competitor. She's on Team USA with me this year, and we're going over to I think it's Serbia this year that we're going to in a few in like right under a month. And I think that one of the things that that's interesting to me is that the gal I was seeing before my wife, she was also doing jiu-jitsu for several years, and all she saw was every time I failed and all the times that I came up short. And I started having success competitively and in our program about the time I met my wife. I had got my black belt about 6 months before I met my wife, and really started having success a year or two following that. I'd taken some time off. My grandma had passed away shortly after I met my wife, and just kind of lost that fire for a bit. And then when I came back, I started having more success at that point than I'd ever had in the sport, with significantly less failure. And so sometimes my wife, you know, has this perspective that, like, you know, it's always been that way because she wasn't there for the preceding like 8 years in jiu-jitsu before, where I just may as well have just been dropped on my head repeatedly. You know what I mean? So it's just, I think it's interesting how sometimes perspective shifts, you know, your framing of the situation. So I have to explain to her that, hey, the things you're going through, I promise I went through them too. And you're going through them at a much younger age than I did. So just keep going.
What do you think the difference was? Like just the perspective, or like did something change in your training specifically that kind of started to, you know, amp up and improve your game?
Well, no, I think that I've kind of held a position that depending on your style, there's like your there's a corner that everybody has to turn at some point. And I have this theory, though I haven't like graphed it out yet, so I'm not really sure how accurate it is, that the later it takes you to turn that corner, the higher your peak is going to be. And so some people turn that corner really quickly. I've got a friend who is really good at compressing people's knees and passing to side mount, just like wrapping the legs and passing to side mount, which obviously I think both of us would agree is not something that you would like say, oh yeah, hey, that's a winning solution for competing at a high level. But he has beaten a lot of fairly high level guys for being in jiu-jitsu a relatively limited amount of time. But I think that there's a low ceiling on that, you know, and like that's what I've told him. Found is like turn the corner, having success competitively now. But I think he'll run into problems a lot earlier. And so I think part of it was that I used to think I needed to be bigger because I would get squashed by a lot of guys at ultra heavy. And so then I put on a lot of weight and that didn't help. And it turned out that I just need to be better. And, you know, finding, I guess, better understanding some of the nuances of the sport. Before Scott died, we had kind of come down and said that, hey, there's like probably 5 things that, all grappling is based around. And we figured they're posture, pressure, pace, position, and timing or nuance. And so you have to be able to dominate one of those 5 veins all the time. And if you can probably mitigate the rest of them. And I don't think I definitely didn't understand that earlier in my career. It took me to close to the end of my career to get that. And I think it's probably just that, I think it took a lot longer for me to get the technical, to get to a technical level to overcome my physical shortcomings.
When you say physical shortcomings, how do you mean? Because, like to see you have some, like, I don't know if it was always this way, but like for you're a big guy, you're in pretty good shape. You've got like really, it's like your game's pretty interesting for being an ultra heavy because you're pretty damn flexible. You're very limber and you're mobile, especially considering like a lot of times big guys are like, it's not this way all the time, but a lot of big guys want to be on top. They want to smash. And then you're like, I'm going to sit out there and I'm going to play this very limber game. Well, and it's not usual for big guys. Well,
full disclosure, if I could just be in every match on top, I would be. I just don't have that capability. I always say to people, I'm a weak confirmed feeble man. I'm not a very strong guy. I would put more time in the gym, and I didn't find that it ever translated to any increase in strength on the mat. I put a lot of time in the gym for a number of years. When I graduated high school, I graduated about 140 pounds.
Wow.
So I was like relatively small. I got up to being like double that, about 280 something. I would say at 230 and above, I didn't feel any noticeable difference in like what being bigger was. And so I've trimmed back down, and I'm between 240 and 250 usually. But when I was younger, I used to think that, oh man, I need to be bigger because all the guys in my division are bigger and I'm getting smashed. And I just wasn't technical enough to, I think, maximize the gifts I did have, which were flexibility and whatnot. Before COVID, I had one of the things that I really was good at was pace and timing. I used to be able to weaponize that to quite a degree, but I got COVID in 2020, and I was never able to get my VO2 max back to where it was. And so that kind of suffered a little bit, but I would say the biggest problem was just not being good enough.
How old are you now?
39. So, not old, but definitely old for what we do.
Yeah, and that can even, I'm sure that probably has a role to play because I don't know about you, man. I remember all the old timers saying it to me, not old timers, but the older guys in the gym saying to me when I was in my 20s, they were saying, man, somewhere around 35, 36, you're just going to start feeling things differently. And I remember like being in I had a match at Nogi Pans, and I'm going with a guy, and I was at my normal pace that basically my competition pace. And I remember like after the match was over, I was breathing so much heavier than what I was used to. And I was in good shape. I was ready to go. I was like, I put in the work. I'm like, why am I getting so out of breath? And then I remember thinking that, look at what's wrong with me. And then I just noticed that like, I'm just getting older, right? It's like, I can't tell you what shifted in like that year and a half or whatever it was, but I definitely felt as I got a little bit older, my pacing, I had to start slowing it down and being a little bit more thoughtful. I can still have a good pace, but not the pace that I could when, say, I was like 32, 33, whatever. So I don't know if maybe that had a role to play in it on top of the COVID, because I know I had some issues for about like 3 months after COVID where I just like, it was like couldn't get my breath during hard rolls.
Yeah, I felt like, to me, I would try to get a pretty good blowout, and then second wind is where I wanted to be at my first match. And then I just felt like I could roll the whole day,
Yep.
And I've gotten back to that, which is good. But after COVID, I remember seeking and trying to find a second wind, like cardiovascularly, for like 2 years. I could not figure out how to get that. It just felt like I was always moving up the hill and could never find that, that plateau, that place where you now feel comfortable.
Yeah.
It felt, I tried swimming, tried doing a bunch of different things to, get the conditioning back. And it took a long time to find that comfort in physical exertion again. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it. I hate to blame it on that because, I also know that I have gotten older. And then, other things that coincided at that point in time, I moved from primarily being involved in operations to moving into management in 2019. And so my overall training volume during COVID dropped. It picked up afterwards, but it didn't pick up to the way it was before. I have gotten older and my body recovers less good than it used to. I don't recover as well. So now I'm in a spot where I train as much as I can, but I can't do near the volume that I used to.
How's your training? How's it changed now? Like since you're 39, so it's like you can't
40,
push it as hard. So what have you adjusted? Like what's your training schedule look like nowadays?
Like now I'm doing 5 days a week. I'll do usually Wednesday, Thursday, and then Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Tuesday is a day that I used to do, but I'm pretty engaged Sunday with the organization at work. And so because of that, Sundays, which would used to be my date night after I train now, I'm usually working until 10 or 11, and so because of that, I started taking Tuesday evenings as a rest day, usually a lighter train anyway. And I'll typically, if I can, train during the day on Tuesdays with my mentor, who is a white belt in Jiu-Jitsu and starting out, but he's great for a sweat. And he's so much fun to work with because he's got a mind very similar to mine. And so he's always eager for new techniques and he picks things up so well. And so usually on Tuesdays, I try to train during the day. But Tuesdays I'll usually get a day off, and sometimes Fridays I'll get a day off. But Thursdays at our gym, it used to be Saturday mornings was our big go. Thursdays has become an insanely hard train, and it's a lot of fun. So, and we have, I would say anymore we have usually, I try to have 2 or 3 really hard days a week. I used to have a really hard day every day. And what I found is I just can't recover from that. I don't think that I get necessarily the timing or conditioning benefit from that. I think I probably get about 80% of the benefit from some very focused technical goes with some of my black belts that I do just banging around like a pinball machine, 5 days a week. And so now I get 2 or 3 focused goals that are about 60 to 90 minutes that are fairly hard. And 30 of those minutes on each day are very hard. And that's about it. I mean, the other thing that kind of sucks is that the guys who have been training with me the longest are also some of the biggest guys in the area that are also incredibly good. So I've got 4 black belts over 200 pounds, 3 of which I wrestle. I drill wrestling up on all the time. And they're also just monsters of men that also all wrestled in high school, are college athletes, including one guy who wrestled at Purdue. And so it's like wrestling up now hurts a lot more every rep than it used to. And so that's something that I think I've gotten fairly okay at. But it's just like to find those reps now, the timing and nuance component has come up so much because to find them on those guys, it's quite the chore. Like that's the part that I think it's gotten so good with training. The better you get is that you're so much more enriched in the small wins and finding successes in areas where like I'll tell my wife will say like I feel like I went through training and I'm speaking for her, didn't do any of the things I wanted. I'm like, well, I went through training and it may have been a fairly neutral train, but I got things that I wanted. I got really beaten some positions I wanted to get beaten. Like you have to. I think the further you go, the more you narrow your focus of what success and failure look like in a train. So,
yeah, that's something I've noticed for like myself and a lot of the people we've talked to, where one of the big breakthroughs for a lot of people is when you start to because like a lot of times when people are new, they come in and they just sort of look at it as win-loss, right? Oh, did I win this? Whatever. Whereas the deeper you go into this stuff, there's so many more variables that you can look for to judge. Was this a productive training session? Did I get something out of this? Because it could literally, like you said, like, yeah, I got smashed, but I was actually working on the position that I was supposed to work on. And I off-balanced them a little bit from there. And I wasn't able to do that yesterday. So, hey, I'm making progress forward, right? For you and your training, if you you're sitting down with yourself, because you've been training for a long time. How long at this point?
Well, I started watching Jiu-Jitsu in 2006. I was practicing on a body pillow until about 2008. And that's why when I started training, I started as a purple belt, which is kind of cool. But so I've never had a blue belt, which I always think is kind of funny, or a white belt. Started training seriously in Jiu-Jitsu in 2010.
Okay, so you've been training for a long time now. So if you were going back to yourself, because again, the training methods back then were much different than they are now. What are some things that have moved the needle forward for you in the training room, right? Like whether that is, more drilling, more situational work, whatever it is. What do you think's been like the things that have been the most useful to you? And if you could go back to yourself and train them that way, what would be the best strategy for them yourself years ago?
Well, I think I was very as being so so lacking in physicality as an athlete. I'm not fast. I was working with a strength and conditioning coach one time, and he said, you just like your sprint and your jog, they are the same pace. They just look different. Like, that's not good, John. I think because of that, when I first started, like I had an athlete the other day ask me, what my mental, how I like mentally handled like getting ready for a tournament and whatnot. And I had said to them, like, and I think this might answer the question, but if it doesn't, I'll
Sure.
try to go in. I said that, when I first started, a lot of people believe in like small goals and wanting to, have different goals they achieve in the stair-step method to get where you need to go. Right. I've never believed in that, like really in anything. So I have a pretty miserable life in that regard. I'm being half facetious. I love my life, but I believe in having a big, hairy, scary goal, and then that's the only one. And so the downside of that is that you don't celebrate any of the major successes you have along the way. The upside is that no matter what the engagement is, I remember being a purple belt going to Nogi Worlds for my first time, having never done an IBJJ, a world championship before. I remember going to my first IBJJF tournament was American Nationals as a purple belt, and I quad golded. But I remember at the time, like, was not nervous at all. And, because I was thinking, like, I want to be in the ADCC. I want to win a black belt world championship. This is neither of those things. So I'm good. And then I just, like, if I lose, cool. Like, that doesn't have any effect on the two goals that I want. I don't think that just because I can't do this doesn't mean I can't do that. And so then I had, like, absolutely no nerves, and I've had no anxiety through probably a super majority of my career for that reason, because I only had those goals and really nothing else mattered. And so the downside of that was, like, I got to the ADCC in 2019, and my best friend Brian Donahoe is standing out with me on the balcony 2 nights before, and he's like, "Man, how you feeling right now?" I was like, "Oh, I'm good, like just like I always am." "Why?" And he's like, "I just got to think that you're probably really, like, really nervous right now." I said, "Well, why did you say that, Brian?" And he goes, "Well, because you always say, like, it's not an ADCC, it's not a black belt world championship, and so you're not concerned, but John, it is the ADCC." And I was like, crap. And then all of a sudden I had anxiety. I never dealt with that in my life before.
Oh, so, no. Keep your mouth shut, Brian.
Thanks a lot, Brian. But yeah, so I think in that regard, that had made it easy. I think that's counterintuitive to what everybody tells you as a sports performance coach you're supposed to do. But that, like, always worked for me. And so, like, bringing it back to, like, training methodology, like, when I started, I was trying to figure, I remember the first place I went, I had been, like, working on a body pillow for a couple of years, too shy to go to jiu-jitsu. And so the first place I went and it was their open night. They called it conditioning night. Every person rolled in the center against everybody. And if it was your first night, you still did that. So it's like, I would not do that to my students, but that's just the way that was. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, then I hadn't really rolled with anybody before, and I beat everybody because I just kept going to X guard, because I've been following X guard from Marcelo Garcia at the ADCC in like 25 and 2007. And I was using X guard to grab the back and come up on people. And I didn't know much, but I knew enough to know how to get to X guard. I had no idea how to play full guard or half guard or a flower sweep or anything like that. But I knew how to get to X guard and tip a guy on his hands and stand up. And I knew how to get the hooks in and produce a rear naked choke. And so I ended up doing very well that night. I think I subbed everybody, including the coach, which kind of set up a problematic relationship between he and I. But then the next day, the owner of the gym at the time had said, "Hey, would you like to start teaching here at this school?" So I'd never attended like a class of somebody else's up until I really haven't never attended a class of somebody else's, except there was a class that Scott had taught. And so I had to figure out like, well, how do I structure a class? I've never been to one. What do I? And so because of that, the only way I knew how to learn was like theoretically trying to figure something out on how a body pillow would work, which I know sounds absurd. It's just what happened. And so we spent so much time initially just figuring out the mechanics of positions. I think it served me really well because I didn't really change much from that. I just understood things a lot more clearly as time went on. I didn't know how to drill because I didn't know what drilling was. This is not like an ecological versus traditional system. I just didn't know what move you drilled because I'd never been through like a beginner curriculum. And I'm teaching class to other guys who have never been through a curriculum. You know what I mean? But I was having competitive success. I think I spent most of my time trying to figure out like how moves worked and why they worked. And then figured if I could figure it out, I reasoned that if I could figure that out and chain those things together, that I could probably find success on the mat. And that ended up working out. I would say the biggest change to my training came from that. I mean, when I met Scott had been raised in like a traditional system. And so, hey, obviously you have no idea what closed guard or half guard is. You're a brown belt right now. Like, this is absurd. You can't have like 3 medals at the world championships and a bunch of other crap and not know like how to do an armbar, John. This is ridiculous. So I'll teach you foundational jiu-jitsu and you work with me on your X guard and inverted reverse daily hiva stuff that you're working on. And so we really were kind of yin and yang with each other at that point. And so it was really effective. But the biggest thing I'd say that we changed was in 2015, I started something I'd call the passing drill. And I wanted to get good at like seated upright guard, which very few people were playing at that point, especially at my size. And so I just had people try to pass me. My goal was without using my feet, just to hand fight and to be able to hand fight and defend and hand fight and be able to affect the sweep without engaging my feet. And that over time got my hand fighting, I would say pretty darn good. But it's really tough because I would pay people to come in and say, hey, just hand fight with me for half an hour. Just hand fight with me for an hour. Go as hard as you want. I just want to get better at the timing component. Because I think we all know the same thing. If you watch guys who wrestle on the feet, the hand fight is everything, but that's only part, but then as soon as they get engaged with each other, there's no more hand fighting. And then when you're on the mat, the hand fight matters up until the pass. And then there's no more hand fighting probably for the rest of the round because everything is some form of being passed or engaging the guard. And the hand fight it's so important in my opinion, but it's such a small component of the overall depth of training. And so I wanted to focus on that. And I added that into our warm-up. And so we would do 30 minutes of that passing drill every night. So I think that level of volume for, 10 years really changed. Like I remember in 2019, I was competing at Nogi Worlds, and Derek Featherstone, a good friend of mine who's a black belt on the team, he had said, I think the following year, John, like you sit with your legs crossed and you're so long, you can't sit like this with your hooks in because you're losing so much dexterity and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Guys are gonna be able to pass you. And I had a feeling that that's probably right, but at the same time, if I'm good enough with my hand fighting, I think I can mitigate that. I just haven't figured it out yet. And I'm really glad I stayed with it. I could have just been completely wrong because a couple of years later, I started figuring out how to, what the timing and the nuances of it were to be able to find wrestle ups and to be able to use my hooks guard the way I wanted to. Because the whole reason I started doing that was to more easily get underneath people who did not want me to get underneath them. And so I'd say practicing hand fighting is a deliberate skill versus an ancillary skill to set up shots and passes. I think is probably the biggest change in my training methodology that probably led to the most long-term success.
That's a super important skill. I remember training years ago with a judoka. He was a Japanese exchange student. And I remember when we're doing the judo class that he taught, everything started with grip fighting. And we would spend a lot of time focusing on grips. And I was like, man, this is really important. Like, why didn't I ever focus on this stuff a lot before? And I got really obsessed with, then you go back to wrestling, judo and everything else. Everything is grip fighting and hand fighting. And it's like the linchpin for everything, because if you want the takedown, if you want the technique or whatever it all is based on where your hands and body are positioned. And so it sort of gets looked over, but it's like, it's the thing you have to have, because obviously you could have a beautiful shot, a fast shot, but if this person is just like all over you with their insides, controlling the inside space, snapping you down on your neck because you never check it, well, it's going to be tough to do that. And like you were saying, if you get so good at the hand fighting, and when you tuck your legs in like that, it also like presents a problem for a guard passer, because usually if your legs are out, I can start grabbing onto stuff. But if your legs are tucked inside, I've got to start reaching out more with my hands, which now you can intercept my hands. And now that creates another problem for me. So I think that's an important skill, is hand fighting. And I think you're right. It's a lot of times it's ignored because it seems like such a small component, and it kind of is a small component, but at the same time, it sort of sets up everything else in motion.
And the other thing I think is interesting about it is if your feet are tucked in, like I've got my heels into my hips, right? Then not only do you have to reach for them, but at any point in time, if like my legs go out, all that leverage is still there. You know what I mean? So it's almost like a compressed spring in terms of potential energy or potential leverage that isn't being leveraged, isn't being used. But you have to almost, as a top player, put yourself in a position, especially if they're tied on, got a hand behind the knee or a hand on the elbow, where now all of a sudden that hook comes out. What was not an issue before, or what was, if you're good enough with your hand fighting, was not an issue, and the hands were enough of an issue to neutralize something. You start adding your hooks in now it becomes a serious issue. You know what I mean? The other thing I think is interesting is, like, if you're seated and upright, like, and I ask you, like, and I mean, obviously the downside is that you can get cartwheeled over, and I'm the king of being cartwheeled over. So that's, obviously a problem. But if you're seated and upright, and I asked you, where can you define you have to get to pass me, it's very difficult to find, right? Because, like, where's side mount? Where's past the guard if you're seated and upright? It's really hard to find that. If I'm leaned forward and I'm like in like that, I know terminology very poorly, but like one leg up, one leg down, and I'm leaned forward, where like passing the guard is. It's either around the outside leg or it's to the outside of the inside leg. And that's where passing the guard is, because that makes a wedge with the ground. But if you're just a top that spins, it's insanely difficult to pass your guards. Now the guy on top has to anticipate where that X is, which the person at bottom can always move off of. So as soon as you go supine, now I know where the guard is. It's anything past your hips. But if your hips are tucked in, your feet are tucked into your hips, and your hips are the top that everything spins on, it's very difficult to be able to articulate that, oh, hey, I've got the underhook and the pass is to here, because the guy's got so much mobility to turn. So I think that, like, also just adds another layer of depth that oftentimes, like, I don't think anything I do is special, but I do think that it's kind of like Han Solo Jiu-Jitsu, in that it's a bunch of simple tricks and nonsense. And one of those is that most people aren't looking for, hey, I've got to figure out where I have to go for a pass to be, because that place isn't there yet. If I lean back, of course, it's right to the side of me, but if I'm seated upright and you get to the side of me and I can roll, turn, whatever, that's really hard to consolidate a pass there.
Are your legs just kind of like crossed, like basically like
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's politically correct, but I would just say they're Indian style.
Yeah.
Like, just sit like that,
Yeah. I'm a child of the 90s, so you can say that. We
can say crisscross applesauce. We can say that, right? That
doesn't
sound as
like, you just like, my wife, who is younger than me, told me that there's like a no square and you can't touch me there, and that's where I go for my hands. You can put your hands wherever you want. I just can't let you put them here.
Yeah. So John, so it's just like, it's super unconventional. I'm just really curious. You taught yourself jiu-jitsu on a body pillow for 2 years. Don't make sure this is accurate.
Yeah.
And you learned X guard, like a really effective X guard. Like, so how did you go about learning this, and why did you choose X guard? It could be, obviously Marcel Garcia is incredible, and ADCC, his success in ADCC, but like, so we talk about like grappling dummies and stuff. It's kind of like a grappling dummy, essentially.
Yeah, but like back in 2005, they didn't have those. You know what I mean? Like, and so, like, at the time, YouTube wasn't as good as the platform is today. And one of the things I think is, I would have loved to have been in jiu-jitsu at that point in time, but I was so dang shy. I'm probably I was so socially awkward back then, and just did not know how to engage with people. or relate to people. And so I wanted to go. I like made so many plans to attend the Jiu-Jitsu club, to go to a school, to do all these things. I just never could bring myself to do it. I was too shy. And so, but I had been watching YouTube and been watching Jiu-Jitsu because, boy, that stuff's neat. And I was big into MMA and wanted to fight at the time. It turned out that like I'm just a weak, brittle person, and like fighting was not good for me. I did well at it, but I could tell when I was training that the ceiling was rather low for me, just because I didn't think my body would hold up, which I think was probably the correct decision. But at the time, there weren't like many instructionals out, but there were matches, and I identified Marcelo Garcia, wrongly, by the way, as the guy who I wanted to mirror my style off of, because he also isn't a very physical guy. Come to find out, that's wrong. Marcelo is probably like one of the tankiest people on the planet. I mean, you look at his grips now, and that's just like not being able to understand jiu-jitsu. And that guy has got like a monster, like dog grip on people with those, like with his hooks grips and his C grips. And like you look at his thighs and his hips.
Oh, say his thighs and his hips.
Same.
I remember seeing him in person and like being like surprised, because I thought the same thing. And I remember seeing him in 2005 at a tournament when I was a blue belt, and I looked at him and I was like, that guy looks like he's like a stout little dude. He's stout little tank. Like, this is not a, like, he's not a frail little guy.
Yeah. Well, he didn't look like Pablo Popovich.
That's true, right? Maybe you're comparing him to a freaking like Greek, chiseled out a Greek god, but
yeah. And so like I remember thinking, and so I would watch matches, and at the time not even full ADCCs were on YouTube, but matches were. And I remember seeing this little guy compete in the absolute. I mean, obviously, like I think it was the Rico Rodriguez match. Was that who it was?
Yeah,
that body slams him.
Yeah, that was the ADCC in California.
Yeah, and I remember watching those matches and being so impressed by how he could use X guard, or like Gordon's like shoulder crunch sweep to get to X guard. And I remember just being so impressed at how like somebody so much smaller and shorter can like leverage this position. And so I just started watching it and pausing it, and then like figuring out where the position was, and okay. And somebody gives pressure here. Where do I move? Why would that happen? I remember I'm in my college dorm, and I'd have people who like, hey, I need you to do this for me. Just put pressure here. I don't understand why I can't be here. John, that's gay. Okay. I mean, this is 2005, right? And so, okay, but I need you to do this. And some people would humor me, and that gave me the pressure response to start figuring out, oh, okay, cool. So like I'd spent a ton of time watching jiu-jitsu before I'd ever rolled with anybody, to the point where by the time I started rolling, I already knew, like I knew very much what I needed to do when I got to some place. I didn't know very well how to get there, because that's that like that invisible jiu-jitsu that Hickson would talk about, that I think really is just like what squeezes and what doesn't squeeze, where the pressure is and where it isn't. That's hard to see unless you're there, so I had to kind of figure that out. But I already knew like what the transitions I wanted to use were. I knew how I wanted to get to and that was basically the extent of it. But then when I first started rolling with people, and people started smashing me, and I was like, oh, well, my foot goes here, and but at the time I could put both my ankles behind my head, and so I was like, oh, and the X comes right in here, and oh my god, the guy falls over, and holy smokes, this works. It was very positively reinforcing. I think that's like one of the things that I was blessed with, was that I had spent so much time watching jiu-jitsu that when I first started doing it, I was having immediate success that I wouldn't have expected, right? But I'm having this immediate success. And so it was like, oh, hey, this works. This is right. This is neat. Versus when most people learn jiu-jitsu, they never have success for the longest time. Like the failure stuff came like 6 or 8 months later, when people started learning how to stop what I was doing. I was teaching people, hey, don't let me do this. And then everything was like swimming upstream, But I think that was the part that I got lucky with, was that initially I had tons of success because nobody else knew anything either. And I had seen these positions a million times. So
it's interesting. I wonder, because I not exactly the same. I started training soon after wrestling, but I remember I would spend like I'd wrestle in the fall and stuff like that, and then in the summertime, I remember me and my buddies who did wrestling, we would get together and like watch videos of what we could find of jiu-jitsu. This is pre-YouTube. This is like 2002, 2003, and so like we're like finding what we can find. Or we're watching MMA fights where they use jiu-jitsu. Like I remember watching a Carl Newton versus Matt Hughes, the first one, and learning how to do a Kimura sweep, whatever, and practicing stuff. And then when I came to jiu-jitsu, I got smashed, and got caught and stuff I didn't know how to do. But whenever I was up against someone who's like another white belt, I generally did pretty damn well because I knew what I was supposed to do. I knew passing guard, I knew going to mount, back mount. I knew all these positions because I'd watched it. But I wonder, like, because information was so much more, there was so much less back then, right? I wonder, if like, let's say John, that same John from then was plucked and it was transported into the world now, like with the amount of crap that's out there,
I mean, way less
whether or not you would have been like, yeah, I'm going to just watch jiu-jitsu constantly, or if it's like watching jiu-jitsu for a little bit and squirrel, there's all this crap on over here on like this social media platform, this, that, whatever.
So
go ahead. I was just like, it's just like a random thought that popped into my head because you were so focused. And I remember having that same level of focus because there was such a limitation on available things to watch, to do, to consume.
Totally. I actually think I would be way less good. And not because I'd be watching other things, but because I wouldn't know what to watch because there's so much good content, so much crap content. And I think the thing I was blessed with was I remember watching Renzo Gracie at the ADCC. I remember watching the matches that I was watching were all incredibly highly skilled and like technically proficient grapplers executing at the highest level. And I could identify pretty quickly, knowing nothing, that, that looks like it's somebody imposing his will on somebody else. That's something I can't do. I probably will never be able to do that. That looks like somebody tricking or tipping somebody into something that they want. I could possibly do that. Like the reason jiu-jitsu appealed to me is I was like, hey, this looks like the only combat sport out there where you can literally outthink your opponent. And I'm pretty okay at thinking. So maybe I could have some success here. I think the fact that I was watching high-level competitors at the time do that, and that I don't think that was as common in the community, was what allowed me to have what allowed me to be set apart from what other people were doing. Like now everybody watches YouTube and watches tons of content, and I don't, because I've got like another job. But that was the way. That's the way now. I feel like everybody is, consuming instructionals. And the best part about it is that like I've got other black belts that consume instructionals and will say, hey, watch this. Filtering this for you. I think this would be helpful for you. Wonderful. Because I don't have time to watch Gordon's new instructional, even though I know all the content on it is really good. I don't think I would be as good because I think that the thing I was doing, no one else was. And so if everybody else was doing this, I'm just some guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and something you kind of touched on earlier, it's something that, again, for people listening to it, there's different varying levels of experience on. It's such an important idea. Like if you look at the best jiu-jitsu practitioners, the best judoka, the best boxers, any combat sport, you look at these people, they have these techniques, positions, moves, whatever, that become synonymous with that person, right? Like that becomes their position, their move, their whatever. And again, that's not by accident. And kind of going back to your idea of like all roads leading back, that becomes like, when you get a good area of your jiu-jitsu, you shouldn't just like, well, I got to move on because I've got to chase the whatever the people get the new meta, the new this, that, whatever. It's like, just if this is your position, no matter what, if it's a good fundamentally sound position, you're going to be able to use it no matter what comes your way. I mean, you can watch jiu-jitsu practitioners of different eras who can use the most basic fundamental jiu-jitsu and still use it incredibly effective. I mean, I had one of my students that was like, she feels really good with close guard. But she's like, I don't know. I feel like I should be using something else. I'm like, why? She's like, well, because this, like, I'm like, she went into her tournament this past weekend, got 2 subs with an armbar, like from close guard. And like, I'm like showing her matches of guys, even like Jacob, like Couch, like using close guard. Well, I'm like, there's tons of good people. You don't have to chase all the other stuff. If it works for you, great. But if you're good here, then like your job is to like find ways to bring them in, kind of like you, where you're like, okay, I'm really good at like getting good at wrestling up. I have these different positions I can use. I'm going to sit forward and I'm going to make you play my game opposed to me sitting back and putting my legs in here. So this way you can step into headquarters or whatever your guard passing position is that you're really good at. You're taking that person out and you're making them fight on the ground of your choosing, which I think is like at the highest level that always becomes the goal. Like, can I make you play from my position or do you make me play from yours? And that a lot of times that in itself can determine a winner.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great way to put it. I think I feel like at the highest level of the sport, that's most of what jiu-jitsu is. When people will say, God, this is so boring right now. Like speaking of like the CJI that happened a couple weeks ago at this point, I heard so many people say that CJI 2 was worse than CJI 1. And I was kind of engaged with something else during CJI 1. So I didn't get to watch it until much later because I was at the ADCC. But I will tell you that like, I like CJI 2 a lot more. And the reason I did was because, and maybe it's just me being old and boring, but I don't find insanely athletic dynamics that are initiated just to get a reaction from the other person to be particularly interesting when it comes to watching scrambles happen. And the only reason I say that is because I don't think it's because I can't replicate it. There's a lot of things I can't replicate that I find very interesting. It's because like to me, the thing that's most engaging is watching people have to solve problems in the sport and being able to watch like the real-time prosecuting of these problems and figure, or like the prosecuting of someone's guard, like being a bigger guy fighting a smaller guy. Like when was it Pato that swept Luke at CJI 2 from that like that weird lasso position? Was that what it was?
May have been.
Like, it was. I was like, well, that's absolutely unreal. Didn't see it coming. Rewinded it like 5 times. Had to watch it. To me, CJI 2, when they had the scoring the way that it was, being more deliberate with what they were doing. Nobody wanted to give up a position and lose. That was. I watched a lot more intelligent matches, though obviously with significantly less scrambles. So to me, that's why I want to watch jiu-jitsu in the first place, because and so much of it that was like slow, to dovetail into what you're saying, was people just jockeying for the position they wanted to pass in. And, that's one of the things I think is so interesting, because I would have said 10 years ago that, oh, that's a difference between the gi and no gi, but it's equal to gi or no gi. It's just you can draw somebody in the gi with your grips, and the person can oppose those grips as well. Give counter pressure and reverse pressure, and I'm pulling too hard and you hit your beautiful X pass or whatever. Same thing happens, but it's fighting for the best position to fight from. And so many of those moves, I think that you only start to notice, like how his foot's turned, where his pressure is, the further you go along with the sport. So
yeah. My only rub with like the CGI 2 was simply just like, I wanted to see hands get raised. Like if it was hands raised, I probably would have been just down with CGI 2. I thought the matches were just fine. My only rub was not like at the match's end, which is kind of part of the quintet style, but there wasn't a declared winner, which for me is like, because I'm cheering, I'm looking at the match, I'm kind of seeing who I'm thinking is winning, and then it's and on to the next person, opposed to, you see the submission happen every now and then where you're like, okay, that was exciting because there was a clear winner. But like when I think of, just any combat sport, at the end of it, you want to have that nice conclusion of like, we had this engagement, we came to the end, opposed to like, it's like one of those like artsy movies that like I, as a meathead knuckle dragger troglodyte, I don't understand, like where they're like, oh, it was shot really cool and there's this cool meaning behind it. And I'm like, I want to be entertained as a movie goer. And so for me, I like, I think you could have said CGI. I think a lot of the problems with CGI 2 would have been just, they were already scoring the matches, just raise a hand at the end and then move on to the next one, even if that meant that person was out because they didn't submit them. And I think you probably would have had people they would have been fine with it because there was that nice conclusion to each match as it was going. And then they could follow along in the storyline of what was happening as these two teams were squaring off.
Totally. That's also why I think open scoring is such a powerful tool. I think actually that is a tool that MMA should leverage. You made me think of it when you said the storyline. I think there's a story that goes into fighting. So I was watching the Crawford Canelo fight last weekend, right? And obviously Bud Crawford from Omaha, and so big fan of that, right? And but like the unofficial scorecard being at the bottom of each round it tells, and it's not obviously the official scorecard, but it tells a story to the casual fan of like what's happening right now. Both people are barely getting hit. Both people are hitting each other hard. What's actually going on? What are the stakes going through the fighters' minds at this point in time? And I would have liked to have seen that. I would have liked to have seen that in jiu-jitsu. I think it's one of the reasons why, wrestling and grappling in general are so much fun to watch, as you can see just how bad someone is doing, or just how good someone is doing, and like Gable Stevenson and Wyatt Hendrickson, right? Well, why was that so amazing? Because it's at the last few seconds, and Wyatt's down, and he has to do everything he can, and like draw on some of his ancestors to be able to like sink that win, and he does, and people go absolutely nuts because you know how close it is.
Yeah. It's a cool story that's being told. And I mean, you look at Gable Stevenson's Olympic gold medal match, right? Same thing. Like at the very end of it, he comes back to win the thing. And so, when it's like when you watch those old shows where they talk about like, the football game where it was both teams going back and forth, the same thing's happening during these matches where maybe this person scores and then this is happening. And then you can get into all this person is the number one guy. And like Gable, number one guy has been winning all this, whatever, named after Dan Gable, which I thought was kind of interesting because Dan Gable lost his last senior match too. I was like, well, that's kind of a weird thing, almost curse, but yeah, there's a story to it. I think the open scoring, like you said, MMA, everything, I think it's really helpful to making it more exciting for the fans to watch because they get to follow along in the storyline, and it almost builds the suspense of it because they know, like last year, for instance, at one of the CGI ones, you'd see the guys, they're both going into the third round, and they're both 1 round to 1 round. So whoever wins this one wins the whole damn thing. Yeah. So then now it's like, there's something going on here, and right. I think that would have been, I think they could have made that simple change, and probably the whole damn thing would have been more entertaining and understandable for everybody. And you would have had less like hiccups along the way where people aren't like, well, why did that team win? Or why did that team win? It's like, well, here, because you're following along and you know what's going on.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, completely.
Were you going to say something? I know we talked a little bit before on the.
So I was thinking about I got some thoughts on CGI too that I'll give you, but I was thinking about this. So back in 2011, 2010, 2011, my parents came out to 2010. My parents came out to Vegas to watch me compete at American Nationals, and that was cool. My parents had never been out to a match to see me in jiu-jitsu. They had only seen me in wrestling, so this is a completely new experience for them to watch me win something. And when I'm out there, like I had I think 17 matches that day, and I found myself fortunate enough to win all of them. Right, my mom.
That's a lot of matches.
Yeah, I know. Like, thank God I was so young, right? And so, like, my mom brought the video camera, and I was on my back, and I was getting triangles or sweeping an X guard. Like, that was basically all I was doing. Yeah. And I had this gimmick back in the day. I didn't know how to play closed guard, but I knew I was so long for my division that I would lock closed guard up, and then I would reach up and grab the Kimura grip, which like nobody's going to get from closed guard if you're square up, right? And everybody knows that by the time you're a purple belt. But I was so flexible, I could pull my leg out of my arms, and I could triangle guys from the Kimura grip. And so that's a huge gimmick. It does not work. I wouldn't teach anybody, but I was flexible enough to be able to do that and just find stupid success where I shouldn't have found it for a very long time. So anyway, I end up like doing really well that day, and I come to my mom afterwards. And at the time, IBJJF didn't have quite the production quality that did, so you could see the scores like at the matches, but that was about it. And I said to my mom afterwards, like, "Hey, can I see those matches?" And she's like, "Oh my God, John, sorry, I did not record them." And I was like, "I thought you brought the camera." And she's like, "I did." And she's like, "I thought you said it was charged." And she goes, "It was." And I was like, "Why didn't you record them?" And she goes, "I just didn't think you'd want. I didn't think you'd want me recording matches that you lost." Now that's because my mom's never a competitor, and you obviously watched the matches that you lost, right? But I was like, "Well, Mom, I didn't lose. I won like every single time." And she goes, "Well, I know." And I'm sure you were surprised as I was when they raised your hand, because she'd only been watching wrestling. No idea. So like open scoring would have been, and like if she had been able to see the score and see what's happening, she'd have been significantly more engaged in that regard. But yeah, I thought that I'll tell you, CGI 2 I thought was really interesting, and one of the reasons for it was like, dude, I thought Adele got just straight robbed. Like, I thought that was such a definitive win against Helena, who I think is amazing. And that just sucked. So that was like a huge bummer for me. I can't remember specifically what we talked about in our chat, but like that is the thing that has been sticking out for a while, is that I thought that she absolutely won the second and the third round. And yeah, that just sucked, because I thought that I would love to have seen her versus Sarah Galvao. I thought all four of those women were amazing, and I would have loved to have seen Sarah Galvao and Adele.
Yeah, the female matches, I think, part of the reason why they were made, they were obviously, the competitors are amazing, but it was made fun by the fact that the score, there's a winner and a loser, and then like there's some excitement to that.
Yeah.
And I thought they did a good job with the female matches, and then the ladies brought it too. I mean, there were some great matches that weekend.
Well, it's like it's so interesting because, like I remember, I've heard the argument over the years that women's jiu-jitsu is whatever, just like women's MMA or combat sports or whatever. But dude, like I don't know who those people are or what they're watching, but like in MMA, Chang Wei Li is like my favorite fighter to watch, period. I think that chick is just a freaking tank. I love watching every match that she's in. I think some of the female jiu-jitsu matches are some of the best jiu-jitsu matches in the sport in terms of both technical and incredibly aggressive. So yeah, I don't get it at all. And I watch women's wrestling religiously now because my wife coaches women's wrestling, and yeah, it's just insane.
Yeah, we were talking about this at the gym one day. There's certain sports that, like, granted, I'm not really the biggest sports guy anyway, like I like combat sports, but as far as like ball sports, not really into them. But I remember like when I used to watch them more closely, I was never really interested in like the WNBA or anything like that, right? Like it's like I still believe this way, and this is not meant to be derogatory, just like you're thinking of a sport that relies on like explosive jumping power and certain things, right? Like where if you watch the guys go and then you watch the women's go, it's like there's something that seems like it's missing, at least for me, right?
Yeah,
now when I watch
sports,
what's that?
It seems like it's two different sports.
Yeah, but then if I go to like grappling as an example, like you watch like women grappling, women wrestling, women jiu-jitsu, it doesn't have that same like, it's like, no, this is just grappling. This is good to watch, right? Like this, they have everything that's going on. They're aggressive, fast. You watch like women's wrestling, you watch the speed that they're using. You watch some of the women grappling, you watch like all the stuff that they're doing. It's just like, I can watch this all day. This is no problem. It doesn't feel like there's that big difference between the two, right? Obviously there is going to be a physical difference. You put, some big giant man into a female division, that's going to be a thing. But, nonetheless, when you watch the women's divisions, like for me, I can watch them just as well as I can the guys divisions. And even in MMA, I've watched like tons of MMA fights where I've been up on my feet cheering, where you're like watching, Holly Holm and I remember, he was Ronda, right? The Ronda was just on a tear, and every time you got to go watch Ronda. Let's see if she's going to keep the streak alive. And then she has the big event. Oh my God, So I can't say that I've ever been on my feet for other female sports other than combat sports, but that could also be that I'm just not really the biggest basketball fan. But I feel like the female combat sports are more on par with like the male combat sports as far as excitement and what they bring to the table.
Yeah, the only female sport I've found outside of combat sports that I can find enjoyable is women's softball. And I think that's probably because of the smaller size of the field, that sport seems so stinking fast.
Okay.
But at the same time, I also am not a ball sports fan. So I know that, and I've got into it. I'm a terrible wrestler, but that also means that I know what good wrestling looks like. I just know that I can't replicate it, right?
Yeah.
I know that Brandon Reed's Duck Under is about as great as it gets. I love freaking watching that every single time, right? I also know that I love watching Sarah Hildebrandt slide by. I just want the best on the planet. And I don't have to care whether you're a guy or you're a girl. That slide by is insane.
It's a beautiful slide by.
Or Kenny Blades' blast double, or Helen Morales' foot sweep. I mean, she's got like the best foot sweeps since Steve Mocco. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's insane that we're at that place where I shouldn't say it's insane. It's awesome that we're at that place where you can see women's wrestlers that have just insane technique. You know what I mean? Where I don't think we would have said that 20 years ago.
No, it wasn't as widely available. You had a lot of women that paved the way that said, hey, we can do this too. And we made a place for them, right? We said, okay, well, let's make some spots for you guys, and it's growing even more. And like now, one of my buddies runs his jiu-jitsu gym has a wrestling program like a youth wrestling program that runs out of it up in Northern Kentucky. And they have a ton of like young girls that are up there wrestling from the time they're little, man. And you see them go and they're killers, you know? And so, whereas back when I was wrestling, I don't know what it was like for you. It's like, there would always be like, you know, a random girl here or there, and you try to match them up as best you could with one of the guys. But now you're starting to get in like female divisions and female championships and that whole thing. And that's pretty damn cool.
So when I was wrestling in middle school, I remember there was a girl named Ricky Southard, very nice lady, and she was just the same size as me. So I was Ricky's training partner, like all the time. And I remember my dad asked me one time over dinner, he knew her dad, and he asked me like, John, you know, do you ever get to wrestle with Ricky? I was like, oh yeah, I wrestle with her every day, Dad. He's like, how does that go? I said, oh, she pins me all the time. And I wasn't articulate enough as a kid to be able to explain this to my dad. My dad's never been in combat sports, so I don't know if he would have really gotten it. But he's like, well, I don't know about John, about you, but I wouldn't let a girl pin me. And I didn't know how to say it at the time, but it's like what I figured out as an adult is, Dad, there is nothing consensual that happens to you on the wrestling mat. Either you're happening to them or they're happening to you, but there's nothing that that's consensually happening to you. Nobody lets you do anything.
Yeah.
And that's like the cool part about it, you know. That's why I was smiling, because I was like, man, I remember wrestling a girl, and she beat me every day, beat me, and I didn't have anything for her. It wasn't like I wasn't trying as hard as I could to just get thumped. So, you know, I just think it's great. It makes me really happy because I think that everybody should aspire to be tough. And I think wrestling is the toughest sport that God ever made, which is probably one of the reasons I'm not very good at it. But I definitely think that people are better people that have had to go through adversity and be tough. And so I want everybody to be as tough as they can possibly be, which means I want everybody to wrestle. Male, female, doesn't matter. I think wrestling is that important of a thing in terms of developmentally. I think it makes you, you know, able to deal with the rest of life. It's a good, obviously, martial arts, the only martial art we teach in school, you know, and I'm just, I'm all for it. I love it.
How did you stick with it? I mean, from what you're explaining, you didn't have a lot of success with wrestling and just kind of losing a lot. Like, how do you keep yourself inspired to continue to show up?
Well, I think it's the same thing. And this is just like my mental outlook from what I talked about at the beginning. This is it not working, right? So I wanted to be an Olympic wrestler, right? That would have been so cool. I thought that was so neat. I remember in watching the Olympics when I was 10, like 96, and thinking that was just the coolest thing on the planet. I don't remember watching Kurt Angle, who was in 96. But I've seen the match, but I don't think I remember actually watching it then. But I remember thinking wrestling was the coolest thing on the planet. My cousin wrestled, who was 10 years older than me, and so I wanted to wrestle too. I thought that'd be cool. I was wrestling at the time and just absolutely terrible, and thought, okay, well, if I do this long enough, I will get good enough that I'll eventually be able to, you know, do this. And it just became clear to me by the time I was going into high school that, hey, I don't know that this is my thing, and I don't want to do it anymore. And I'm really glad that I made that decision, because that is probably the thing I regret. One of the things I regret most in my life. So you'd ask, well, why am I glad that I made it? Because that ate a hole in me for 4 years. As I said, it was not I never suffered from an abundance of friends, and on top of that, I was embarrassed for 4 years that I didn't go out for the wrestling team. I didn't go out for the first year, so I didn't feel like I could the second year. I didn't go out for the second year, so I definitely felt stupid trying to go out for the third year. And by my senior year, I didn't want to be the kid that just does it because he's a senior. And I left high school never being able to get over that feeling. I remember my wrestling coach, who's still my wrestling coach, Keith Massey, was my Spanish teacher at the time, and he had said to me, he's like, hey, you know, John, wrestling signups are going on, and you know, I just didn't know if you saw him. And I was like, well, I'm not wrestling this year, coach. And there was a look of like disappointment in his face, and he was like, oh, okay, cool. And yeah, it still makes me uncomfortable. And so when I left school, I had been watching MMA, and I thought, hey, you know what? Maybe this is the thing that I can do to fill that hole. And it hasn't. Obviously, I still feel crappy, but I've never gotten over it. I'm pretty open about it because I wouldn't want anybody else to make a mistake like that. I tell people now that like I've tried to live my life since I graduated, never having to answer the question, I wonder what would have happened if, like, so, I don't know if that sounds like a slogan you see on the back, on a bumper sticker or something, but I try to make the decisions like, I won't wonder what would have happened if I just stayed at home or if I just stayed doing this, but I will wonder what would have happened if I never took that chance or took that risk or, tried to seize that opportunity. And one of them was like, I need to start figuring out jujitsu. And part of it was I was too shy to even obviously do jujitsu initially, but that was the whole reason why I started, was because I couldn't handle the overwhelming feeling that I let myself down and let other people down too. And so that has kept me going up until now. Like now it's like, I hear people all the time talk about, you want to make sure that you're doing it for you, because if you're doing it for other people, like, whatever the goal is, that'll always, come short. I don't understand that. I can lie to myself pretty easily, and I could let myself quit pretty easily. But there have been so many people in my life that have sacrificed time, resources, a relationship with me. My wife has put up with so much crap in the time that I've known her, just so that I could train and so that I could, prioritize the things I was chasing, first in jiu-jitsu and then in business. That I feel like if I don't deliver, I can let myself down all day, because I could just say that I'm a turd, but letting other people down is, that's something that I don't ever want to have to deal with. So that was why I started doing jiu-jitsu. And so I say it's my biggest regret, and also the thing that I'm glad that happened, because if I hadn't, and after I won in Kazakhstan in 2019, my wrestling coach had said to me, well, hey, like at some point you got to get past this, because if you had, you may never have done any of this, which is probably true. If I had high school, maybe I would have done any of that. So that's probably true. And so that's what I've been trying to work through. But I definitely think that most of your motivation needs to come externally, and try, like, so for me, it's the people that are around me, and my ancestors that like did everything they could to bring me here, meaning to this country, living in this time like I am. I really feel like if I were growing up, and if I've already passed on, I was looking down and I saw, John Hansen sitting on his bed watching cat videos, wasting his life, that I'm pretty damn disappointed at, everything that we went through. So I really try to make sure that I'm not disappointing those people. So yeah, that's that. That's how I kept going, or that's why I did that. I was, I believed in something that probably wasn't going to happen, and then afterwards, I regretted that decision, quitting so much that I've been trying to make up for it ever since.
Yeah, some of the most, like, it's from talking with people over the years, like a reoccurring theme, maybe not all the time, but a good amount of the time, is that some of the most impactful decisions that were made, some of the best decisions that were made, some of the best, whatever, the good stuff, the positive stuff that happened in their life, generally sort of came from such a not so good place, right? Like some negative experience that created a fire that then, forced them to do something. So, I feel like that's something I've heard. Like you said, it's like it was the negative in the sense, but then it's like, well, would you be where you are now without it? And so it starts off as a negative, but then, depending on how you play the cards, right? Like maybe it turns into something else.
Yeah, that's really interesting. My dad, I got lucky. I was very blessed. I had two wonderful parents, and they're both still alive. And I don't know how I handle losing either of them, but I got very blessed, with both of them. But one of my things that my dad told me when I was younger is he said, John, you've never known how to be happy. No matter what you have, you always want more. No matter what you're seeking, it's never enough. And I had said to him, I was like, well, was I unappreciative of, what you did for me, gifts and things like that? And he had said, no, you didn't really care about any of that, but anything that you got, you wanted more. Anything that you achieved, it wasn't good enough. And if you're going to be happy in life, you need to figure that out, because otherwise you're just going to live a pretty miserable existence. Well, fast forward 20 more years, and I'm where I am, and I still haven't figured that out. And I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing at this point. But I've never known how to be happy. When I would have a tournament, an example would be when I have a tournament that went well. I encourage my students to do this because I didn't. I never celebrated. I would find an open mat the next day. I would figure out how to train. I'm not going to waste time because the bigger goal was the one that was, a long ways off, and I'm not going to waste that time just because I won this one. If I didn't perform, I would still find something the next day, and obviously not take time off, no matter what I achieve at work, in school, in jiu-jitsu. I've heard the term pleased but not satisfied, and I'm trying to get there. But typically, I just I always want more. So I think that's tough because I wouldn't want anything else. Because if I did and I was satisfied, I see people who are satisfied with their life and are happy, and I don't want what they have. But at the same time, I also realize that I probably also won't fill that bottomless cup. So I'm probably going to always be that way. And, I've just made peace with it by saying that, well, God didn't intend me to be happy anyway. So I'm here for a reason. I don't really know what that is, but I'm trying to figure it out. So sorry about that.
No, it's something I think a lot of us grapple with, pun intended, the different things, but I don't know, for me, it was like the older I got, right? Like I remember, like, as an example, right? Like setting like a monetary goal. This is the amount of money that I want to make. I remember hitting it and being like,
yep.
Okay, hit it. What now? Right? Or, hey, I want this particular medal. Got it. What now? Or this many students in my gym. Got it. What now? Or this woman that I had a crush on. It was like literally this woman that I had a crush on. Now she's my wife. What now? Like, it's like at some point you just have to, it's like, the old saying, you got to stop and smell the roses. It's like you can still have that, like, that lingering paranoia that this could all end right now, and that you got to stay on your game and you got to push push yourself. Like I still have that. There's this gnawing feeling, growing up, first world poor, right? We're not like third world poor, but, first world poor, from a single parent stuff. There's this gnawing anxiety that's always there for me. That's like, look, don't ease up. Don't get complacent, because it'll be like a match where you're up a couple points and then you stop pressing the gas pedal and they come back on you. You got to keep pressing. But at the same time, it's kind of, it's like, I try to take time to like, look, this is pretty friggin' cool. Like, look what you've created over the years, and like enjoy it and have fun with it and play with it. It's, and enjoy that time there, but, still have the lingering paranoia a little bit, but, so you can harness that flame, right? You can harness that energy, but still every now and then be like, like, this is a pretty cool fucking existence, and I'm lucky to be here and have what I have, and let's just keep making it better. It's like a different type of fuel, I think. Learning how to like run off of, like, get away from the one type of fuel that fueled me for a little while, then switching from the fear, anxiety, whatever that is, to like a little bit of that. Like, there's a little bit of that mixed in, but also to this, like, just burning desire to keep, raising the bar to, a place I don't know where I'm going to raise it to, because at this point, I don't know what the goals I'm supposed to shoot after are, so now we're just like, everything's like bonuses. Let's keep pushing it.
Yeah. When I was, I heard when I was leaving college, I heard Henry Rollins talk about, I was listening to a spoken word that he did when I was in college. And he had told this story about when he started becoming the lead singer for Black Flag. And he was a fan of Black Flag at the time. And he was working at a Haagen-Dazs, and he had seen they had openings for to try out. And long story short, he does the tryout. They call him and tell him, hey, you're good to go. And there's a really cool point in the story that I would encourage everybody to listen to. I know it's on YouTube somewhere, but he said that the reason why he's still hustling at 50 some and working 300 days a year is because at the end of the day, he feels like one mistake or one missed job, and he could be right back at the Haagen-Dazs.
Mm-hmm.
I know that feeling. I always worry that the one day that I take off, is that the opportunity that I'm missing? I don't want to wonder what would have happened if, and I don't think I've ever found I wonder what would have happened if I had just taken that day off. sure they're out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know where you're going with that. I love it.
It's kind of like a gift and a curse, right? It's kind of like what makes you so good also is something that kind of haunts you, and you have to find that, if there's some way to find a balance to it. Like, I mean, you've had the success that you've had because you've had some of these challenges and some of these painful moments, right? And you're like, I don't ever want to go back there or feel that, so I'm going to try to chase after something that's not that feeling that I had. But
yeah, I would never say that. I wouldn't. I don't think anybody would change it for anything, right? Like,
yeah,
I've been very blessed with everything that I've had, but Dan had said to me once, like, well, why do you think you've had the success you've had? The same reason anybody else has, because like typically that stimulation either is great or it's or it breaks you. And I think it probably breaks you more than it makes you successful. So like, that's why I think that, you see success stories that come out of terrible situations, but I think they're the exception to the rule more often than they are anything else, for that reason. Because if that was the way everybody was, then it would just be the way. It wouldn't be, it wouldn't be the story. So I definitely wouldn't make it out to be that I've had a difficult time socially, maybe, but I think one of the things that I've been fortunate with is that I have a pretty easy ability to fixate on whatever it is that's important to me, and then spend a decade chasing it. So if you put enough time and effort into anything, I think even a person of any level of intelligence or means can, in this country, get whatever they want, which is like the greatest benefit to living here, regardless of what your political affiliation is that, dude, if you work hard enough, long enough at a singular purpose, I can't imagine anything you can't have, because I am a NAF. I am a non-athletic fat person. And if I can figure out a way to be successful in jiu-jitsu, then I promise you anybody can figure out anything they want to be. You know what I mean? So I don't know what you guys think, but actually I'm curious to what you think.
Well, it's interesting that you said that. This weekend I was competing and then was just reflecting on different things. And so every so often, usually like every 2 weeks or so, I'll write a letter. So my son's about 2.5. And so I write him a letter that he'll then have someday when he gets old, right? And it's kind of like almost like you could think maybe meditations with a fatherly spin to it, right? So sometimes I'm just telling him about stuff that we did, like, hey, we played in the mud today or whatever, so he can have a conversation with me when he gets older. Or I will like throw down little lessons. And I was just saying, like, man, consistency. And I started listing out all these different things in my life where it's like, okay, like, I didn't really feel like I really hit my stride in jiu-jitsu until like probably 13 to 15 years in. I mean, I was winning stuff here and there, but like really finding myself to the point where I am like, I really hit a different level. That's like 15 years in. Business wise, I remember like being in business for like 5 years, being flat broke, sleeping on couches and air mattresses. And then before I finally started to sort of turn that around, and there's all these different examples. And I'm like, whatever you decide to do, if you're going to do it, go all in and be willing to do it for a long time, because the thing that a lot of people lack is consistency, long-term consistency. It's like diet. Like, we have an obesity problem. That's literally the simplest fix. It's like you stop eating all this junk and you just do that for a long period of time. You'll just lose weight. Like it's not that hard to just not be like morbidly obese. It just isn't, unless it is to a degree because your association with food and your relationship with food, and there's all that stuff. But as far as the actual like nuts and bolts of it, it's a pretty simple fix. But I'm like, a lot of times people, will do the diet for a couple days. I feel fine, whatever. And then they stop. So everything was about consistency. And so I think that right there, like you're saying, you're doing something for a long period of time. And if you do that and you're in this country, you'll be all right, and you'll be all right with whatever you're getting into. You'll move the needle in some fashion. Will you be the best ever? Maybe not. That's okay. But you'll still be far better than you ever dreamed you could be.
Yeah. My, Brian Donahoe, one of my black belts, has said oftentimes that if you're focused enough, you can always have a seat at the table. And that might not mean you're at the head of the table, but no matter what you're doing here, you can have a seat at the table.
Yeah, I like that.
And I think it's one of those things that's like, well, actually, I don't really care what anybody thinks of my philosophical outlook, but I definitely think that there's a problem because not everybody can be trained to do a job, and there isn't a job for everybody. And so I am very empathetic to that, because there are just times where some people are not born with all the skills that they need and are not able to manifest them. Sure. But I think for the vast majority of people, no matter how hard it is, I obviously we have all made bad choices, and some of those choices compound and they limit our options. But I think being able to focus on one thing and keep working through it allows you to achieve, that level of success that you otherwise wouldn't. Example of that is like right now I'm going through my MBA, and it's awesome. And some of the people that are in my team, the success they've had in their lives at their age, I am just listening to them and thinking, man, like, I think that I'm successful, and I am so outstriped by you. My mentor in our organization, his name's Art. He's a guy I train with on Tuesdays, and he hearing, like, he's in his 50s, and hearing what he has achieved in his life, and not in like not in a gregarious sense, but in a just speaking with that experience, I soak it up whenever I can, because I just can't fathom how well I look at our CEO. I can't fathom how Dan just decided, hey, yeah, I'm going to start an organization. I'm going to leave my career early to start this organization, and everything that comes from this is going to, just big leap of faith. That's big kid stuff, man. That's super awesome. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, like, it's one of those things where I just don't think that, I don't know that you, and obviously I've been a lot of places. I've only grown up here. So I don't know if that's something if that's something even fathomable if you're growing up in a country that isn't here. And I think that's one of the things that we're so conditioned to here, is that level of innate opportunity, that we don't notice it. I think it's the reason why people are still willing to crawl through broken glass to have a chance at what we probably take for granted more often than not.
Sure. Well, we've talked to several different, his family, they immigrated here from the Soviet Union. And we've talked to several different people that, were like fresh immigrants here in the United States. And, it's interesting because you'll have people that were born here and they have this sense of like, oh, we suck, this sort of self-loathing about where they're at. But then it's like you talk to someone who just got here and they're already doing well. And it's because of the mindset that they brought with them. They're like, give me anything and I'll just make something happen. Like, even one of my students he won the lottery in Cuba, which meant that he got to come to America. That's what he got for winning the lottery, right? Like, you don't get it's not the Powerball. You get a chance to go to America, and you've got to facilitate it, but you get your ticket to go. Yeah. And within a short time, he'd worked a bunch of jobs, had bought a home, had taken care of it himself. He did all these different things because he stepped off the boat and was like, let's go. Like, I'm here, like, throw me anything, throw me any bone you got, and I'll make something happen. And so I think just like anything else, it's the mindset you bring to it, right? Like, just like you, okay, like, oh, I'm too shy to train, I can't, whatever. I'll just practice on this damn pillow, or hey, roommate, come here real fast. Like, let me figure something out, right? Like, the opportunity, the mindset you bring to it, I think is huge, because everybody's got a chance to do something. It just depends on if you have that, whether it's an aid or if it comes from a mentor, that encouragement, that drive, that's something to like, just do what you can, do something, and stay focused on it for a while.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I cut you off. Keep going.
No, you're good. That was it. Yeah.
So my wife's, one of her high school coaches used to tell her, and she tells this to her girls now, that hard work doesn't owe you anything, but it is the price to get in the door. So like, and I thought that was always interesting, because people will say, and shoot, I've thought it before, I worked really hard to not get anything. And the interesting thing is that just because you worked hard doesn't mean anything, especially like the higher level you go. That's one of the things that I think frustrates me the most when I hear people talk about elite contests of sport. And maybe I'm wrong, but I've never, I guess since I started competing when I was a kid, I've never thought, oh, that guy won at that elite level because the other guy didn't want it as much, or because he wanted it more. And I think one of the reasons for that is because I think at a certain point that gets burned out of everybody, where that's such a filter that at some point everybody is a hard worker, and everybody is just straight tough, and everybody will just keep going. So at some point, they're intangibles. They are like, who's more explosive, who has better technique, who's on that day. But it's really hard for me to say, oh yeah, that guy just didn't want it, or that guy, wasn't as tough. Like, dude, I don't watch football, but I know that football players are the greatest combination of type 2 fiber and grit toughness that you can get in a person. You know what I mean? Just being big and fast and strong and willing to be a car crash. You know what I mean? And I don't think that anybody, and I mean, I've heard people who watch football extensively say, oh, this person in the NFL isn't tough or isn't tough by NFL standards. And I just don't believe that that's possible, because I think at some point, and maybe I'm wrong, I could be wrong, but I think at some point that being tough and being willing to work hard and being willing to do all those things, I think that gets burned out of everybody, because that seems like it's the barrier to entry. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree. To be at that elite level, I mean, yeah, of course, everybody's, you've gone through so much, as for football, for example. I mean, you probably played in college, you went to high school, and you have to make it through so many, and then tryouts and, combines. There's a lot that goes into it. And I think that, obviously there's a certain number of abuse that your body can take, right? There's a limit. There's a little power level that will go down. You get enough concussions, you can't really get hit hard. There's physical attributes, there's different things, but all those guys are, there's a reason why a lot of those football players are retired and kind of broken at the end of it all, is because they give a lot of their bodies to, to what they do.
I always tell people that Jiu-Jitsu is the form of grappling that emphasizes working the least hard. Like, if I was in a sport that was, if I was in a grappling sport for people who wanted to work hard, they just call it wrestling, because jiu-jitsu is the easy way to do things, right? You take things against the joint. You can't take things against the joint in wrestling. You can't put an arm bar to get somebody into to get somebody to move in wrestling, because that's moving against the joint. It's potentially dangerous, right? So in wrestling, you have to do everything the strong way and the hard way. In jiu-jitsu, you have to do everything. And I'm awful at wrestling, but in jiu-jitsu, you have to do everything the easy way, right? Like, the easy way is the way that works. You hinging something, you leaning into someone or away from someone's lever. I heard Josh Barnett told me when I was talking with him one time that jiu-jitsu is strength through leverage, and wrestling is leverage through strength. The implication being that you have to be strong if you're going to gain any leverage in wrestling, but you have to have leverage if you're going to feel strong in jiu-jitsu. I just always thought that was interesting. But you look at the ADCC, and that is not the selection of elite athletes that it is to, say, play professional football, because the pool is larger in football, and obviously the financial incentives are greater. And so a lot of reasons why football is just pulls greater athletes. But even in the ADCC, there's not a single person that's ever been in that show that I believe, or at least that I've seen, that isn't just stupid tough. Because you have to be. There is a trial system, especially now, that will filter out all the people who aren't, and so I just think that's interesting.
Very cool.
I agree, man.
Chew, you got anything, man?
No, bro, it's a pleasure chatting with you.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. So I appreciate you taking the time to jump on with us.
Yeah, thanks for the time, guys.
Yeah, if anybody wants to train with you or see what you're up to or whatever, what are the things that you can plug to lead them there?
Well, I have a social media that I don't really do much with. So, but if they want to reach out to me, I don't scroll and I don't swipe. So if you send me a message, I definitely see it. My wife sends me 50 messages a day on Instagram. So I do see things. I just don't go through the roll. So if you posted something, I probably didn't see it. But if you sent me a message, I'll see it. And I'm at Rearden Metal, REARDEN _METTLE. But our gym page, which is managed by my wife, is psf.omaha, OMAHA.com, and Dojo Omaha is the gym that we train at, DOJO OMAHA. And we are a combined team. So either of those will get you to the right place. We're in Omaha, Nebraska. You should come train with us. At the same time, you should also check out at Pedigo Submission Fighting, all one word, PEDIGO. I think you can figure out how to spell submission fighting if you're on this podcast. And check them out. They're out of Mount Vernon, Illinois, and that's home base for all of us. So that's where you can find me. I don't post much, but if you reach out, I'll always answer.
Very cool, man.
John, thanks for your time. I love your perspective on a lot. You have a very unique perspective on a lot of these ideas we discussed. So it was very refreshing to hear it. And best of luck. You're probably going to be you got some tournaments coming up, so some matches. So best of luck and all that.
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to it. So just trying to see if I can still keep doing it.
Oh yeah, dude. Well, I'll be cheering for you.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks a lot.
All right, John. Thank you, man.
Yes, all right, guys. So hopefully you enjoyed that podcast with John, who describes himself as sort of not likable, but I found him fairly pleasant. And, he's very self-deprecating.
Actually, he called himself a turd.
He called himself turd, right? But... Which, I mean, all of us are a turd in some fashion. I mean, we're all shitheads.
John was cool. Very, I loved his perspective on things. He has a unique approach, talking about learning jiu-jitsu on a body pillow.
I forgot to ask him if he had a name for the body pillow.
Well, maybe we'll ask him.
Yeah,
that's so crazy to be at that high level and just training literally with random people just to like move around with them, and then like being able to apply that. It gives me a different perspective, because I was like, if you have a rolling dummy or whatever like that,
dummies are worthwhile if you can stick with it. See, the problem is most people, like grappling dummies, end up they take the space right next to their exercise bike that they bought that they never use, right? Like that's because the space isn't conducive to it. So that's like a lot of people, like they get a grappling dummy or whatever, and they just don't use it.
Yeah, but there's like accessibility wise, like gyms or you have training partners just really accessible. I mean, his was kind of a matter of necessity because he was too shy to go to the gym, and he was just kind of learning and had this limited amount of information he could learn just from watching YouTube videos. It was pretty cool to hear his perspective on that. Unique guy. I mean, to be able to do that, spend time doing that, and actually be at a high level and able to transfer that kind of theoretical knowledge almost into actual physically being able to do it was super cool.
Yeah. So yeah, guys, hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. If you guys want to check out our sponsors, give them a look. Athletic mints, microdose THC mints with other cannabinoids to help get you into a state of flow, recovery, or supporting you with your hard training. You can check them out at athletic.com, ATHLETHC.com. You can use the promo code Jiu-Jitsu10 for 10% off the order at checkout. And again, they're just microdose THC mints, so you're not gonna go off your rocker. It's not like a crazy mint that you bought when you're out in Las Vegas or something, and then you saw colors. But it's or not colors. You saw
colors.
No.
Heard colors.
Heard
if
colors.
You heard colors. It's a whole different problem.
Yeah, I meant to say that a different way. You guys get what I mean.
Yeah.
So anyway, you can check them out. You'll feel a difference, but at the same time, it's not anything too crazy. Thanks to our sponsor, Epic Roll, epicrollbjj.com. They make everything from gis, rash guards, shorts, anything and everything jiu-jitsu related, t-shirts. You can check them out at epicrollbjj.com, and the promo code is Jiu-Jitsu20 for 20% off the order. And last but not least, if you guys want to support the podcast, you can check us out over at or check out our sponsor, Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web is one of the OGs in the CBD space. They also make a lot of other balms, muscle rubs, functional mushroom products, CBN products to help with sleep, a lot of other stuff. If you want to check them out, go to charlottesweb.com, and the promo code is Jiu-Jitsu30 for 30% off the order. If you want to support the podcast directly, you can roll yourself on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. I'm sure you know how it works. It's pretty common. You guys get a bunch of extra perks and exclusive content. In return, you support the podcast with the Patreon for a very inexpensive price. Win-win. If you want to check it out, roll over to the Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Last but not least, if you guys would like to become a member of my Chew Crew, like to subscribe to the Chew Crew daily email, then you can do so by going to my website at jiujitsu.net/join. When you join up, I will give you some different resources on how to be more focused on your training. We talked a lot about focus with training in this podcast today. It's really important. It can be one of the things that really moves your game in the right direction. I give you some strategies on that, both in a video and an ebook. And then afterwards, you get my daily email with everything that I think might be useful to you with training on and off the mats, and as well as other exclusive offers and discounts that I don't give anywhere else. And so if you want to check it out, just go to my website at jiujitsu.net/join, JOIN, to do that. Guys, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. We'll see you next week.